From the plains to the rolling hills, Oklahoma is a state that resonates with stories of resilience, determination, and pride. Welcome to Inside the 1581, a podcast of the Oklahoma Hospital Association. Together, we'll dive deep into the heartbeat of the great state of Oklahoma as we journey through the rich history, diverse culture, and the ever-evolving landscape within the 1,581 miles of border in our nation's 20th largest state. Each episode of Inside the 1581 will feature conversations with the many voices which help shape our state's future and our shared vision of improving health and healthcare in Oklahoma.
All right, well, thank you for joining us in this edition of Inside the 1581. I'm Rich Rasmussen with the Oklahoma Hospital Association, and this is a geek out moment for all of us today. I'm delighted to have joining me Brenton Hill, who is the head of Operations and General Counsel for the Coalition for Health AI. We're going to be spending time, as I said, geeking out on artificial intelligence. And Brenton, thanks for sitting in and joining us on Inside the 1581.
Yeah, happy to be here in the great state of Oklahoma. And, you know, Rich, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is Inside the 1581, and, you know, why is it important?
That's a good one. That's when we have the little bell that goes off. Ding. Yeah. Well, Brenton, that's a great question. And we've had a couple folks ask us that as well. And Inside the 1581 is the title of our podcast. And we were trying to figure out what would we call it. And we sat around over a couple cups of coffee trying to come up with an idea. And we looked at our state and realized that it's a pretty doggone big state. And so we just Googled, what is the mileage? What is the circumference in miles of the state border? And by golly, it's 1,581 miles. So we decided to name our podcast Inside the 1581. So here we are talking about issues of importance or interest to any Oklahoman. And is there a connection with the work that our hospitals are certainly doing across the state? And as we were talking earlier, we've talked about human trafficking. We talked about what went into the decision to cancel the Thunder game during COVID and the interconnections with all of our hospitals in that. We've talked about food insecurity. And today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. And so, Brenton, I'm going to lead with this quote that I read. This comes from McKinsey & Company, a very well-regarded healthcare consulting firm. And they said, although healthcare businesses have used AI technology for years, adverse event prediction and operating room scheduling optimization are two examples. Generative AI represents a meaningful new tool that can help unlock a piece of the unrealized $1 trillion improvement potential present in the industry. That's a pretty strong statement about what artificial intelligence can mean for all of our lives, and certainly within the healthcare field. You have had a history in this for a while. I understand you had worked with the Mayo Clinic on this and have now converted or transitioned to a new role at the Coalition for Health AI. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your work in this, and then, you know, what is CHI? And then we'll get into, you know, a deeper dive, as I said, the geeking out on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. So I started my career at the Mayo Clinic as an administrative fellow, actually, and always grew up knowing I would do something in the healthcare space and loved hospital operations. And as I worked at Mayo, really started to fall in love with this whole concept of digital health, AI governance, and how AI is used in the healthcare setting. And so embarked on a one-year journey learning about digital health regulation, software as a medical device, et cetera, and found myself within a group within Mayo called the Mayo Clinic Platform, which is harnessing data and evaluation tools to essentially bring about trustworthy AI using Mayo Clinic data and partnering with other institutions to do so. So got my start there and started working with the Coalition for Health AI really incidentally. Mayo is a co-founder of the Coalition for Health AI. It's a group of organizations that came together about 3 years ago informally that said, can we think about what are the best practices around health AI and how can we lead and, you know, help the market develop best practices? And so they came together. They started having meetings, and what grew from like 8 individuals in the beginning quickly became 2,500 organizations that were interested in it. And so we decided last year to incorporate as a nonprofit and to really scale and start delivering on our mission, which is bringing about trustworthy AI that serves all of us. So it's a great initiative, and we hope to help organizations, not just healthcare delivery organizations, but health organizations that are also involved in this to achieve that as well.
And so is it safe to say that what Chai is trying to focus in on is making sure that we don't stifle the opportunity for artificial intelligence, but it also ensure that it remains a safe tool to be used in the healthcare sector?
Exactly. Yeah. Blending an approach of innovation and patient safety is at the core of what we're doing.
So let's geek out here for a minute. So, we think about AI, we probably could look to our iPhone and, asking Siri, one version of AI. We could sit on and we can go on and chat GPT and we can ask it to write our paper, or we could ask it how we could solve a problem. We would be able to source the information in the data fields that it touches. So that it would be one area, correct? And we know that there's also another part that probably provides the greatest opportunity for advancing humanity, advancing healthcare, is on the generative space. Can you kind of explain a little bit about, what are these different AI, sources that are out there?
Definitely. And I'm not a data scientist, so let's.
And I'm not either. But it's still, we get to be the geek until hopefully we're going to bring in to join us Byron Yount, who is also, my understanding, is the head of digital and AI for Mercy. And so we hope to bring him in so we can have even a deeper geek session. So we'll start with what you've got, and then certainly we can give him the tougher questions.
Certainly. So I think right now, if we're thinking about AI broadly, there's really two kind of camps that AI can fall in. Predictive AI, which is your typical machine learning that's been around forever. So think about, if we look at use cases right now, you think about ECG algorithms that are analyzing ECGs and helping clinicians flag, when a patient potentially has an ECG that's abnormal. Or on the radiology side, you think about CT scans and machine learning that has been trained to identify what an abnormal CT scan looks like. That's been around for a while. That continues to advance, and it's really useful to providers. It's super effective, right? If it's trained correctly, if it's used correctly.
So let me pause there. So on that, so if we've got you're using your wearable, I'm using wearing my Apple Watch today, and it's connected to my iPhone and it's collecting information. I subscribe to a couple of different apps that do that. So you could see a future, or I assume the future is today, that information is being collected. It's sending to my primary care physician or to a third party that grabs that, assembles it, and analyzes it, and then sends it almost in real time back to my primary care physician of what they might be seeing in terms of episodes in my health, what I might be experiencing at that time. Would that be an example of that?
I think potentially, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that future is yet to be had. The regulatory landscape around this is so complex.
Okay.
You have multiple kind of agencies. I mean, you think about ONC or FDA that are regulating different parts of this. FDA is traditionally medical device, and then you have ONC, which is on the data kind of interoperability side. I don't think we're to a point yet to where that's seamless like we want it to be, but I think that's the future state, right, is putting data in the patient's hands that's useful, that can inform their decisions, and that can be seamless. That's where we want to get to. We're not there yet because of either technology or just regulatory kind of pathways that are not permitting us to have that type of interoperability. But exactly, that would be ideal state, and that's where I think the whole industry wants to go to. So
let's go back to where I cut you off, and I apologize for that. You were talking about how we're using AI in the background, particularly in radiology and others. I'll let you pick up on that.
Yeah. So gave the example of predictive AI, machine learning, right? And in the other side of it, though, you have this generative AI concept, which is new, which is being fueled by advances in technology, mainly in chips, right? And so if you look at generative AI or large language models, which are typically known by, what those models do is they can take in large swaths of data, analyze it, and then generate a response based on your question. So you have the input as a person, I want to know about this, and you give it a specific input, it spits out the output in real time or after a couple of seconds, analyzing potentially millions of data points to do it. And so truly an advance in technology and capabilities, and is very promising for the future, but doesn't come without its perils, right? We know, and everyone recognizes this, that AI models, both on the machine learning and the large language model side, they're only as good as the data that they're trained on. And so if a model is not trained on data that's correct or representative or what have you, you can't really trust the model. And so that's really a big issue that we're facing today.
So it would be safe to say that what's really important to really, advance this is to ensure that the data that we do have is clean, right? It's been scrubbed appropriately, and that then becomes the repository that the AI reaches into to be able to begin doing some of this assembling and review. Is that kind of what you're speaking to?
Exactly. So if you look at ChatGPT today, it's trained on internet data. And so it could be trained on Reddit. It could be trained on inaccurate Wikipedia for all we know. And
so it's opining on inaccurate information.
Yeah, surely. Sure. Yeah. And so it's pulling from all these different sources, right? And a lot of it can't be correct. But if it's incorrect information and we're relying on that, that's when I think we get into trouble.
And I think that's to get into trouble, right? Because I think that's part of what the general public has concern over. I had listened to a lecture where the presenter had essentially spoken to the fact that it had asked the AI bot that it was working with a particular question, and all the bot did was repeat back what was in the literature.
Yep.
And it gave a diagnosis that the physician didn't agree with. And the physician asked the bot, "Why did you say that?" And the bot came back and said, "Well, I thought that's what you'd want to hear. What's in the literature and what you'd feel most comfortable with." So I think those are kind of the fears that we have on this. And so it would seem to me that what Chai is trying to do is to, parse the waters here, make sure that what we advance through the healthcare field is information and our tools that have essentially been vetted, that we feel confidence around, and that are reliable in our clinical decision-making and in the other adaptations that we would use AI for.
Exactly. Yeah. Chai is working on best practices and guidelines for the entire industry around generative and predictive AI. And one of the things that we're doing differently at Chai, you have a lot of groups out there that are saying, these are the best practices, these are what you should be doing. And we applaud those groups, and, we love them because we think the work that they're doing is important. What I think differentiates us from those groups, though, is we are going one level deeper, and we're saying at a statistical analysis level, so looking at the core principles of trustworthy AI, so thinking about usability, safety, all the different types of things that everyone can recognize that are core principles of AI, and we're saying, okay, on a generative AI model, what should be the AUC score for a particular model?
And that what is that score again?
And that's a AUC score, or sensitivity or specificity.
Okay.
So at a baseline level, like how do you measure it, and how do you make sure that good is good? How do you measure that the AI is actually performing as it's intended to do? And so we're working with subject matter experts from across the nation, across the world, quite frankly, from the top institutions all the way to institutions that are not normally represented in these conversations, to figure out what's good, what good looks like, and how we can do it together in a safe and effective manner.
You're listening into Inside the 1581, and we're joined by Brenton Hill, who's the head of Operations and General Counsel for the Coalition for Health AI. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation after we hear from our team members and supporters at Cyrano Video.
Cyrano Video is a next-gen video production and digital marketing solution. Video creation doesn't have to be expensive or time-consuming. We enable you to create all the content you need while ensuring it reaches your intended audiences. Learn more at CyranoVideo.com.
All right, welcome back to Inside the 1581. We are joined here with Brenton Hill, the head of Operations and General Counsel for the Coalition for Health AI. And Brenton, we were talking about some of the work that Chai is doing to ensure that we have tools that are safe, that are proven. We've got best practices around them as well. And we do appreciate what Chai is doing. I thought maybe what we'd do is we'd pick up on the approach between the balance of innovation and privacy or patient safety. Let's start with patient safety first. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing on that, that patients would feel confident that the work that you're developing today will have impact over patient safety, but yet will allow us to continue to innovate.
Definitely. So I think balance is a hard concept to think about, right? What I would turn the tables on is it's not balance, it's about prioritization. And so what we're doing at the Coalition for Health AI is we're first prioritizing patient safety and patient engagement in all that we're doing. And we're doing that by, one, involving patient advocates in the conversation, patients where appropriate, and then representation from clinicians that actually have bedside experience that can say that's not going to work for this or this reason. So nurses, doctors, pharmacists, et cetera. And so, yeah, I would say we're prioritizing that, because if we don't prioritize that, then, someone gets hurt, the industry takes a step backwards, we lose trust from the public, from the patients, and from providers. And that's not what we want to do. And so we're prioritizing that. What I would say on the innovation side, though, is we recognize that people are also adopting this in real time. And so what we're doing at the Coalition is, instead of, walking with and, trying to advance at the pace that potentially the regulators are looking at, we're being proactive, and we're saying over the next 6 months, and we're shooting for October, we are going to produce a version 1 of our best practices and our testing and evaluation metrics, so that people can be informed as they're building AI, as they're deploying it, and as they're trying to make decisions around procurement, risk management, and so forth. And so that's what we're really trying to do is make sure that we can keep up with where the technology is going without sacrificing patient safety at the heart of it.
And when you think about AI, I almost liken it to the beginning of the World Wide Web, right when the internet came out. If we had put a fence around the net, where we would be today, we would not have had the level of innovation, the level of expanded commerce that really has changed the world. And I kind of look at AI as that opportunity if we appropriately, develop guardrails on that. And so I also look at it from the perspective of what tremendous change it can mean, even in the patient safety side. So if we have the ability to look at a medical record and look at the information on a patient and have that, through the generative process, evaluate and look at all of those scans and identify areas that may not have been seen by the naked eye that the AI has the potential of identifying. Talk a little bit about what that has the potential to mean for patients.
Yeah, I think there's already studies that are showing that machine learning models, especially in the cardiology and the radiology space, tend to be more accurate than clinicians. And so we at the Coalition, and I think the broader healthcare context, we don't see AI as replacing clinicians. We see it as augmentation of their existing capabilities. And I think there's going to be a future where if you're not using AI, it may be considered malpractice because it's so accurate, it's getting so good that you as a patient are going to want to have it used on you because, it's going to be, it doesn't rest, it doesn't tire. And it has the capacity to sit there and just, churn out result after result. If we look at the generative side, what I think the real promise is there, and what I think it's being used for now is, one, reducing provider burnout. So what provider wants to go through an entire medical record, potentially thousands of pages, all at once to find a simple answer? Why shouldn't we have a large language model scanning the entire patient record and then pulling out the results that the clinician wants to see in a matter of seconds? That immediately is a huge win. What we're also seeing now are these use cases where it's there's these applications where it's essentially an ambient listening large language model that's there with you in the room as a patient, and it's listening to that doctor-patient conversation, and it's helping the clinician to essentially scribe the visit. And so generally these are called AI scribes. And so the clinician doesn't have to sit there and look at a computer as they're typing out their note. They can actually engage with the patient. They can make it more personable. And then after that visit, the clinician doesn't have to sit there and chart for 30 minutes to an hour after each visit. They can go on their way. They can not stay after their shift, and they can have a better quality of life because of the promise of what this is showing.
And I would assume too that as the physician and this active listening is taking place, if a patient presents with some type of indication of their discomfort or the vitals that are being distributed from on that patient, the physician's able to see that, and it might query the physician with, you may want to check on this, or you may want to look at that. I would assume that would be part of some of this generative work that's going on in the background that can perhaps get to a diagnosis or a treatment plan much quicker.
Yeah, definitely. I do think it has the capability to do so. Where I think we're walking a fine line, though, is where you're potentially merging into the medical device space. So we know that medical devices are used to diagnose patients, and if you have an AI model under the current regulatory framework that is being used to diagnose patients, it needs to go through regulatory approvals. And so I think we're seeing a lot of companies right now trying to figure out, okay, do I want to spend the years in research and all the money associated with that development cost to go through the FDA, or do I scale back on what my model can do, make it less complicated, but also still useful, and do that type of stuff? So I think there's really like this interesting kind of gray area where companies are trying to figure out, like, there's not a lot of regulation around this. The federal government hasn't necessarily spoken. And so, what do I do as a developer of AI to make something that's useful and productive, but doesn't necessarily have to diagnose a patient, because that requires a lot more rigor. And I don't think we're, quite frankly, ready for AI to diagnose us.
Well, and also, so that balancing act with not a lot of regulation currently in place, that also creates for an investor and innovator a little bit of pause on whether or not they want to do that. I think you speak to that, and it does also present a real challenge for us that if we don't stay really engaged in this, our worldwide competitors will have the opportunity to leap ahead of us. And one of the things that as a country we've been very successful at is developing the technology, owning it. Now, we might license somebody to distribute it, or we might license somebody to manufacture something, but when we own that, that has real value. And I'd hate to see us lose the opportunity to remain ahead of the field worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. And I think large organizations that are developing AI want to do what's right. I firmly believe that. We have a number of them involved in the coalition. And at the heart of what they're wanting to do is make sure that things are safe. But I think when you don't have regulation to go by and you don't know essentially where to go, because regulation really does help us to know where to go and to know where to innovate and to know the limits of what we can do. And so when there's not that there, it just, like you said, it gives people pause. They wonder what they're supposed to do. And then you have the states that are starting to legislate. And so then you get multi-system, multi-state health systems that are in different states that are wondering, okay, now I have to abide by all these different rules. Like it's just going to be hard. And so what I think what Chai is trying to do and what the market needs right now is, what are some best practices and guidelines and little s standards, right? We're not a standards development organization, so we're not producing standards, but how can we inform those that are making standards so that they can, acknowledge what the best practices are from those that are actually on the ground level creating and then using this technology. So
I think one of the, what I've heard from patients on this issue is a question of their patient information, their privacy information. We see, that it seems like every week or even every day, if you look worldwide, there are data breaches and there are bad actors that are trying to exploit access to health information or financial information or security information. And so I think that's a lot of where the public tends to lean is, how do I know that this is going to be secure and that my privacy will be protected? What is Chai doing in that area as well?
Yeah, I mean, one of the core principles of trustworthy AI is privacy and security concerns. And so we actually have working groups dedicated to coming up with best practices and principles around that, and then also metrics and methodologies of how you measure that. And so that's one thing we're doing. I'm not a privacy professional myself, so I can't necessarily tell you this is what the best practices are, or et cetera. But I think key to what we're doing is we're involving federal agencies as federal liaisons in the work that we're doing, so that they can help inform their perspective into all this, and into what they want to see, how they protect the public, how they protect patients, and what their expectations are for this, so that can help it, inform us. And so the work that we're doing can also help inform how they're thinking as well. If you think about President Biden and his executive order that he executed a few months ago, earlier this year, I should say, rather, he called for public-private partnerships, because he recognized, and I think everyone recognizes this, that the federal government doesn't have the expertise, and I think no government has the expertise to go out and say, this is AI, this is how we should do it. And so I think the key to all of this, and what we really want to do, is establish public-private partnerships where we're working together with legislators, with startups, with patient advocates, with all these different organizations that have skin in the game, to do this in a consensus-driven fashion. You can never achieve consensus, that's just unrealistic, but as consensus as possible, to be able to do this, and that's what we're really trying to do, is involve everyone in this.
So we think about this AI as it relates to diagnosing a condition, or assisting with helping to analyze billing files. We see hospitals talk about using machine learning for helping to reduce cost and accelerate processing of payment of claims. We see the potential for it working in support of medical devices. We see that downstream, but we do see that coming forward. What about how we can use this to really help us in our public health missions across our country? Being able to look at all of these data sets and trying to identify ways that we can improve health and healthcare in our states or in our community. How do you see AI plugging into this larger public health conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think healthcare organizations are some of the most rich data centers that we have today. And that's why they're so vital, is that they contain all this data, and they contain different points along a patient's journey, along a patient's home life, just all these different types of things that could then be informed and help an AI model evaluate whether a particular patient needs a different type of assistance, right? So think about food insecurity. If a patient has a certain, and again, I'm just making this up, if there were certain statistics in that patient's medical record that could inform, and this would have to be done by an expert, right? But that can inform whether that patient is potentially at risk for food insecurity, and then that health system can connect them with the right resources to do so. I think that helps everyone. That helps our, public system. That helps, the state, but whatever, it just helps. And so I think the promise of AI is really recognizing key trends, and then allowing that personal touch to connect us with individuals and organizations that can help along a patient's journey to get the right resources.
Well, I think it's exciting to think about how it can help us solve some of these issues. Oklahoma ranks 47th nationally in our health performance. We got to get to a better place. We can do better. And if we can figure out ways to connect all of these various dots in using the tools of AI to help us with our planning, certainly our evaluation of what we're doing and what we might be able to do better. And it is comforting to know that organizations like CHI are out there looking to make sure that in this space, we're putting the patient first and making sure that we create the safest and the best environment for the use of this technology to advance better health. And so we appreciate that. And Brenton, I appreciate you coming out too. And as we talked at the beginning of this, we're looking forward to potentially having Byron Yount from Mercy, who's their Chief Data and AI Officer. And so hopefully we can get him in and we can have a second Geek episode. We get deeper into the weeds of the medical applications for this. But thank you for coming out today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and really look forward to continuing to engage the broader community And I will say, if we're especially looking for representation in rural hospitals right now.
Okay.
So I think if any listener is like, how do I get involved in the AI space? How do I make my voice heard? Please contact me. You can find me on the internet or whatever. But yeah, I think that's my call to action for the hospitals and people of Oklahoma is, let's get involved.
Well, we'll respond to that call to action. We'll add this to our upcoming Rural Hospital Council meeting that we have, and we'll see who is interested in participating in this. There's a lot of opportunities, within the rural space, certainly, and it's very underserved in our country, and so we will respond to that. So, Brenton, thanks for joining us. And thank you all for taking time to listening to this episode of Inside the 1581. And so as we wrap it up, I want to say thank you for joining us, but also saying thank you to our friends at Cyrano Video, who are our sponsor of today's episode, to Alex Taylor, our producer of Inside the 1581. He's the one who's going to make it sound much better, and also produce our YouTube feed for this as well. Susie Wallace, who is our Director of Communications, who makes this all happen. Please make sure that you subscribe and follow us to stay up to date on future episodes. And I also want to continue to mention this week's music and also our ongoing soundtrack, Gunslinger, by Ends of the Earth, who provide the audio background for each and every episode of Inside the 1581. Until we come back again in 2 weeks, we want to thank you all for joining us. And again, any questions that you might have about our subject matter today, please reach out to InsideThe1581.com, and we'll connect you with Brenton and others that are working in the artificial intelligence space. Thank you for joining us.